NASM is giving you free courses. That's right, free courses each month just for being part of the NASM family. Learn about everything ranging from nutrition to strength, weight loss to stress relief, and everything in between. Click the link in the bio for information and to claim your free course before they're gone.
You are listening to the NASM-CPT podcast with Rick Richey, the official podcast of the National Academy of Sports Medicine.
Hello, and welcome to the NASM-CPT podcast. My name is Rick Richey, and we are going to continue today talking about our CPT 7 in basically a webinar or a podcast study course for the CPT 7. So for those of you who are studying for your CPT exam to become a certified personal trainer with NASM, this is the 7th edition that we're going to be reviewing. And for those of you who have already taken your exam and you are NASM CPTs, first off, congratulations. Thanks for making us a part of your education. And I also wanted to say that this doesn't mean it's time for you to tune out. In fact, it's a great refresher. It's a nice bit of content that allows you to listen to what you've learned in the past and then think, oh, maybe I can start applying some of the things I haven't thought about in a while. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. And today is going to be, the next two sessions we're going to do are going to be about program design. And 20% of your test comes from program design. We are going to be reviewing today the NASM OPT model, so the Optimum Performance Training Model, and that is kind of the anchor for NASM. It allows us to go through a systematic progression with clients through periodization and allows us to say, okay, well, what are our acute variables and how can we program and how do we put variety into the variables? And the NASM OPT model allows us to do that. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Later on in the week, we're going to get into talking about special populations and program design. So let's get into what we're going to be talking about. Program design. What's the purpose of it? Why do we do what we do? Well, we want to ask questions like this. What exercises are most appropriate for my client? What exercises are contraindicated for my client? What exercise intensities are appropriate for my client? So are we going high intensity? Are we going low intensity, moderate intensity? Where are we on that intensity spectrum with my client? How many exercises are appropriate for my client? How many sets and reps should I have my client perform? How many days per week should I have my client train? Some of that is training with you as a fitness professional, and some of that is the programs and the exercises that we give them to do on their own on days that they are not with us. How many days a week do we do that? So this is about creating a purposeful system or a plan to achieve a goal or a desired outcome that our clients are seeking. The purpose of training a program is to create, provide, develop a path for the client to achieve his or her goal, as opposed to saying, I want this out of my workout. And we go, let's do one workout at a time and not string those together in a system or a progression. And if you don't have a good design, then if your designs are random, then your outcomes will be random. If your designs are purposeful and they follow a system, then that means that the system that has been developed, like the OPT model, has certainly been repeatable. And that's what we want. We have a proven system that has been repeatable over and over again, showing that those outcomes are what's developed through this system of implementation. And so that's what we're trying to do, is teach a system that has worked for many people in the past based on science. It's evidence-based that you can do with your clients. And this requires the fitness professional to have a comprehensive understanding of some key concepts. So let's get into some of those concepts right away. Periodization and the OPT model. First of all, let's look at the structure of the OPT model. There are physiological adaptations of stabilization, strength, and power. Those are the 3 levels of the OPT model. Let's talk about them again. Stabilization, which is our base level that we start with first, and then we add in strength. So we must add strength to stabilization, and then we add power to the strength and the stabilization we've built. So stabilization, strength, and power, and it must take place in a planned, progressive manner to establish the proper foundation of strength for each subsequent adaptation. And so we start with stabilization, strength, and power. That's our progression. Well, what's the application? I see the structure. What's that application? Well, the application is ensuring that based off of what type of exercise plan we are in. So if we're in the stabilization level, we're selecting the right exercises for stabilization. When we're in the strength or the power level, we are selecting the appropriate exercises for those levels. Are we selecting the right acute variables? And by that could be sets, reps, tempo, rest range, the intensity at which you're lifting. Are you selecting the appropriate variables that go along with a structured program? And then are we applying in both a periodized manner to different populations with different goals? And that will be our next talk, where we get into different populations and how they can be applied. Now, remember, the NASM-OPT model is the Optimal Performance Training Model. It was first used with professional athletes, and then it started to be shifted and say, how can we take these variables and apply this to general populations? And then we'll look later in another episode, how do we take these and apply them to special populations? So periodization in the OPT model varies the focus of a training program at regularly planned periods to produce optimal adaptations. And there are 2 primary objectives: the training program into distinct periods or phases of training, and training different forms of strength in each period or in each phase. And that controls fatigue and volume of training, and it helps to prevent injuries. So those are our main objectives when it comes to the variety that we put in the OPT model. Divide the training into distinct periods or phases of training, and training different forms of strength in each period so that we control fatigue and volume of training and we prevent injuries. Now, let's get into the training plans. Training plans, here's a great way to break them up. There is an annual plan, a monthly plan, and a weekly plan. Sometimes that annual plan is called a macro cycle. And then the monthly plan might be a mesocycle, and the weekly plan might be what's called a micro cycle. And sometimes those mesocycles can change and be lengthened out for a period of time. Sometimes the annual plan is for a full year, but it might be for athletes for an entire season. And then you can break them down into mesocycles and microcycles for those athletes. So let's just go with this kind of general overview, an annual plan. Annual plan organizes the training program for an entire year. And that allows you to go, okay, well, based off of a typical progression that you might see, I expect to take my client through the OPT model by spending, I don't know, maybe a mesocycle, a month in one particular phase of the NASM OPT model. And then I might progress them to the next phase. And all of those mesocycles will, over the course of a year, will make up that annual plan. Let's talk about the monthly then. So that annual plan's made up of monthlies, some to quarterly or bi-monthly, but here we go. Monthly plan, a mesocycle, details the specific days of each workout, showing the client exactly what phase of the OPT model, which is the type of training they're going to be doing, what's going to be required on each day of the week, as well as when they're going to reassess. And it's pretty good when you talk to somebody about when they're going to reassess, because it's like prepping for a test. If you know you're going to do a 10 rep max squat test at the end of 2 months, then that might be something that motivates some people to not only work hard while they're with you, but also potentially take some time to go and do their own training outside of their gym time with their personal trainer. All right, let's look at the weekly, or what's called the microcycle. And it gives the client a picture of exactly what's going to be used in his or her workout for that period. So this is what we're going to do this week. And notice that when I say this, it's not about telling the trainer what the trainer is going to do. It's about providing feedback to the client about what they're going to be performing. And I think it's good to think of it this way, to process it this way. Yes, we need to plan our clients' programs, putting macrocycles, mesocycles, microcycles, but showing it to them, letting them know what their plan is. Otherwise, they're just showing up expecting to get a workout, which is fine, but showing up knowing that there's a progression and that there are assessments and there are benchmarks that we're trying to get to by a certain time, and that we need to train for the test. We need to prepare for those tests that we're going to be putting them through, these physical assessments. All right, let's talk about two different types of periodization. There's linear periodization and undulating periodization. So let's talk linear for a moment. Linear periodization is a traditional method of program design, and it allows increases in training intensity with decreases in overall volume over a set period. So with that, in regard to the OPT model, is that you would start with stabilization, level 1, you'd progress to level 2, you'd progress to level 3. So phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, phase 5, that would be a linear progression. Well, undulating is referred to as non-linear periodization. It changes different acute variables on either a daily or a weekly basis. So what you might be doing in undulating periodization is that, let's say you've got somebody Monday, Wednesday, Friday that's training with you. All right, well, Monday might be a stabilization day. Wednesday might be a strength training day, and that Friday, a power day. All right, well, let's say I want to take them all the way up to power. What do I do then? Well, which are you trying to prioritize? So if you're trying to prioritize strength, you might do a strength day on Monday, stabilization on Wednesday, strength on Friday. And so what you've done is you've provided a little break, allowing the body to minimize that same exact type of workout or intensity. So you've got a stabilization day in between. And honestly, as long as you're following that system, then you're going to do well. So which way are we going to undulate? That's part of you as a professional figuring out what works for your clients based off of what their goals, needs, wants are. So let's look at the NASM OPT model. Let's review this through all the levels and the phases. Again, there are 3 levels: stabilization, and then strength, and then that level 3 is power. But let's look at the phases. So stabilization has one phase. It is called the stabilization endurance phase. And the thing I like about the OPT model is the name of each of the phases is telling you what you're going to get out of that particular type of workout. It doesn't tell you what it's doing physiologically in the body. No, not necessarily. It's telling you these are the outcomes you're going to get. So if you're in phase 1, you're working on stabilization and endurance. So what do we call it? Stabilization endurance. Phase 2 moves out of the stabilization phase, and there are 3 phases in the strength training level. Phase 2 in the OPT model, which is that very first phase in the strength. So this is phase 2. It is called strength endurance. So phase 1 was stabilization endurance. Now it's strength endurance. Then the next phase is muscular development. Muscular development, building muscle, hypertrophy, putting on skeletal muscle, increasing muscular size, muscular development, phase 3. Then phase 4, maximal strength. Our goal in phase 4 is to see how much you can lift and get better at lifting a lot. And then phase 5 is the power phase. And the power phase is more about speed production, rate of force production, and it is a superset with a max strength exercise supersetted with a lighter exercise done explosively, which we'll get into that soon. All right, acute variables. Acute means something that lasts for a limited period of time. variables, the things that vary or change. So what are we varying? What are the acute variables? Well, the amount of repetitions that you do, the sets that you do, the intensity at which you train, your overall training volume, the tempo for each repetition, your rest interval between sets or circuits, your exercise selection. Are we doing exercise selection as linear or the horizontal approach, which is bench press, break, bench press, break, bench press, break, or are you doing vertical approach to training? So are you doing a circuit throughout the whole body? What's the order of exercise? There are things like peripheral hard action where it's an upper body, lower body, lower body, back and forth. What's the exercise order? Training duration. How long are you going to be doing the training? And then training frequency. How often are you going to be coming in to do your workouts? These are all what are known as acute variables. Okay, now let's get into the OPT model and just start breaking it down level by level. So stabilization level focuses on the main adaptation of stabilization. It's designed to prepare the body for the demands of higher levels of training that may follow. It is prep. It can prepare you, and your muscles adapt faster than some of the other tissues in the body, like tendons and ligaments. And so the stabilization level is a good level to start preparing your muscles, yes, but also to prepare other tissues in the body, because your muscles can get stronger faster than these other tissues. And so what we're doing is saying, let's start at the stabilization endurance level and build onto that, so we're not immediately throwing you into heavier exercises that your muscles may be able to adapt to, but maybe the ligament, the tendon, some other soft tissues in the body aren't quite ready for adaptation yet. So let's look also now at the goals of each of these. So the goal for the stabilization level, one is it's going to help to correct muscle imbalances. We spend time focusing on the assessment. What are the outcomes of the assessment? Are we looking at some of the short, tight, overactive muscles? How do we address those? And then how do we address those underactive muscles and provide strength to create balance back into our body? We want to improve stabilization, and the stabilization very often of the core musculature, making sure the lumbopelvic hip complex is stabilized. We do want to also, as a goal, prevent tissue overload by preparing muscles, tendons, ligaments, and joints for the upcoming imposed demands of training. And then improve overall cardiorespiratory and neuromuscular conditioning. And then we want to establish proper movement patterns and exercise technique. So we'll do our exercises a little bit slower. We'll focus on movement rather than focus on how fast we move or how much weight we can lift. We're going to focus more on how well we can move. So in this phase one, specific phase one, stabilization endurance training, here's kind of a breakdown of what you're looking at. The warm-up, which will be self-myofascial techniques and static stretching. Optionally, you can add in some dynamic stretching. It's going to be 1 to 3 sets. Your repetitions are 1 30-second hold, which is the tempo. And then you can move right into the next ones. Your activations like core and balance, 1 to 3 sets, 12 to 20 repetitions, performed slowly with a rest of 0 to 90 seconds. So 0 seconds might be the rest between each exercise. The 90 seconds might be the rest at the end of a circuit. We're also going to focus on skill development, perhaps plyometrics or speed, agility, and quickness. Again, remember, this is a performance-based model. Not every client needs to do this, but if they're capable, it's a fun engagement and helps them to develop some skills. So some plyometrics, speed, agility, quickness exercises, 1 to 3 sets, 5 to 8 repetitions of plyometrics, 1 to 3 on the SAQ. Your tempo, like in a squat jump to stabilization. You will jump and then you will land and hold that landing for 3 to 5 seconds. keeping that moderate tempo on your SAQ work. Again, your rest is going to be 0 to 90 seconds. All right. Let's focus now on the more important things in regard to what you familiarize yourself with, which is phase 1, stabilization endurance training, resistance training section. The resistance training, your sets are going to be 1 to 3. It was like that in all the other things, our warm-up, activation, skill development. 1 to 3 sets. Your repetitions are going to be 12 to 20 repetitions. Your tempo will be a slow tempo. For example, a 4-2-1-0 tempo, which would be, let's say in a push-up, you'd lower yourself down for 4 count, pause at the bottom for 2, lift up for 1, and then the pause at the top is 0. So no pause at the top. Sets 1 to 3, reps 12 to 20, tempo slow, and your rest range is going to be 0 to 90 seconds. Moving on to the strength level of the OPT model. Strength level, we're working on endurance and hypertrophy and max strength. So strength, endurance, hypertrophy, max strength. Here are the goals. We want to, 1, increase the ability of the core musculature to stabilize the pelvis and the spine as you start to add in these heavier loads. So these are going to be through more complete ranges of motion. Also, increase the load-bearing capabilities of your muscles, your tendons, ligaments, and joints. We're also looking at increasing the volume of training with more repetitions, more sets at greater intensities. You're going to increase the metabolic demand by taxing the ATP PC system and the glycolysis energy systems to induce cellular changes in muscles, which can allow for things like weight loss, but also muscular development or hypertrophy. And then we want to increase our motor unit recruitment, frequency of motor unit recruitment, and the motor unit synchronization or max strength, how they work together to create stronger, bigger, more intense lifts. That is our strength training level. There are 3 phases in the strength training level. So we're going to start with phase 2 in the OPT model. So the strength training levels, the phases are phase 2, 3, and 4. So phase 2, strength endurance. It's going to include a warm-up like self-myofascial techniques and active stretching. You still have the option of dynamic stretching if you want to do that. 1 to 3 sets. And then here's the thing. When you leave a level in the OPT model and go to the next one, that phase, that first phase in the level jump is going to be a superset. So you are going to do supersets in your resistance training, which we will get to in a moment. So you can do also in your warm-up, we've got self-myofascial techniques to do, and you can do active stretching, about 5 to 10 repetitions of the active stretching. For a 1 to 2 second hold. All right, activations. So core and balance exercises. You do 2 to 4 sets, 8 to 12 repetitions at a moderate tempo, 0 to 60 second rest. Skill development, things like plyometrics and SAQ, 2 to 4 sets, 8 to 12 repetitions of plyometrics, or 3 to 5 reps of SAQ. And the tempo is repeating plyometrics. So you're just repeating a movement. It's not as fast as you can go, but it's not with a pause like it was in the previous set, in the previous level. And then we get into resistance training. Here we go. We're looking at 2 to 4 sets, and then you're going to superset. So it's 8 to 12 repetitions of a strength exercise, followed by or supersetted with 8 to 12 repetitions of stability exercise. So what might that look like? All right, well, that might look like a barbell bench press, right? It's a traditional strength training exercise for 8 to 12 repetitions. And then immediately when you put that weight down, shifting over into a suspension trainer push-up for 8 to 12 reps. So now you've worked on your strength and you superset that with stability. The tempos for your strength training are 2-0-2-0. So that's a 2 second on the down phase, pause for nothing, lift for 2 counts, and don't pause at the top either. So down for 2, up for 2, no pause at the top or the bottom. And then your slow tempo might be a 4-2-1-0. So that would be 4 counts on the way down, the eccentric, pausing for 2, lift 1, and then 0 pause at the top, going right into the next exercise. So that's, again, a 0 to 60-second rest. So after each superset, what does that mean? 0 means you're doing it in circuit. So if you're doing a chest exercise, you can move on to a different body part immediately. Or if you're doing them in a horizontal load, then you just take a 60-second break and then you do the exercise again for 4 sets. All right, let's go into phase 3, muscular development. Muscular development, you warm up would be self-myofascial techniques, active stretching, optionally dynamic stretching, 1 to 3 sets, 1 rep of self-myofascial rolling and holding that for 30 seconds. Or you could do the active stretching, 5 to 10 repetitions at a 1 to 2 second hold. Then your activation exercises like core and balance. You're going to do 2 to 4 sets of 8 to 12 repetitions and a 0 to 60 second rest. Skill development, plyo and SAQ, sets 2 to 4. Your plyos are going to be 8 to 12 repetitions and your SAQ 3 to 5. Your tempo for your plyometrics, just repeating like before. Your SAQ, you're ready to pick up that speed and start moving quickly. 0 to 60 seconds rest. Here's our main focus. Our main focus, again, is the resistance training. On the muscular development in phase 3, you're going to do 3 to 6 sets of a given exercise or a body part. The repetitions are 6 to 12. And you can go up, you can do 12 to 20, just like we did in phase 1. It's allowed if that's something that you desire, if your clients enjoy that. You don't have to follow this exact 6 to 12, but because we've already focused on the 12 to 20, we are now progressing this for muscular development. So 6 to 12 repetitions, the tempo to be a 2-0-2-0 tempo, which is the eccentric for 2 seconds, no pause at the bottom, concentric lift, 2 seconds, and no pause at the top. So 3 to 6 sets, 6 to 12 reps. The tempo is a moderate tempo, up for 2, down for 2, and then your rest 0 to 60 seconds. All right. We've got phase 4 in the OPT model called maximal strength, max strength. Our warm-up will include self-myofascial techniques, active stretching. Optionally, you can do dynamic stretching again, 1 to 3 sets. Your reps, 1 rep for self-myofascial techniques, holding for 30 seconds, or 5 to 10 active stretches for a 1 to 2 second hold for each rep. Your activations, 2 to 4 core activations or balance exercises, 8 to 12 repetitions. Your tempo is going to be moderate. Skill development, plyometrics and SAQ, 2 to 4 sets. Your plyos will be 8 to 12, performed moderately quickly, or 3 to 5 of your SAQ, and you goes fast. All right, resistance training. Here's kind of the major focus. Resistance training, while in phase 4, max strength, your set range, 4 to 6 sets. Your repetition range, 1 to 5. 1 to 5. So it's heavy, hence max strength development. So we've got 1 to 5 repetitions. Your tempo at explosive, as fast as possible, AFAP, as fast as possible. You're going to do this explosively, but it's heavy. So we're not focusing on, let me lower down for this, pause for here, lift for that. We're not focusing on that at all. Our goal for max strength is lifting as fast as you can move that heavy weight, which will not be fast, but just try to get that weight moving. You're going to move it explosively, and then you're going to rest 2 to 4 minutes between sets because we need time for that ATP to build back up so we can repeat this because we have multiple sets. How many sets? Remember, 4 to 6 sets, 1 to 5 repetitions, tempo explosive, resting for 2 to 4 minutes. And then we move into the power level. The power level is where we start to increase the speed of muscle contraction, which is called the rate of force production. Our goal is to increase the velocity of movement. It's also to increase the rate of force production by increasing the number of motor units activated, the synchronization, and the speed at which those muscles are excited. So let's talk about this. This is the last phase in power training, phase 5, warm-ups, self-myofascial techniques, and dynamic stretching, 1 to 3 sets. So you can do 1 set of self-myofascial rolling with 30-second holds, or 10 to 15 dynamic stretches at a moderate but a dynamic tempo. Activations like core and balance, 1 to 3 sets, 8 to 12 repetitions to be performed explosively with your core work, and your balance work to be done with control. Your rest, 0 to 60 seconds. Then your skill development, moving into the plyometrics and SAQ, 3 to 5 sets, 8 to 12 repetitions of plyos, or 3 to 5 of SAQ, and you're going to do these explosively. Now it's time to crank up the speed, doing this explosively. And now let's look at resistance training. Resistance training in phase 5 power training, you've got 3 to 5 sets, but we also have a superset. 3 to 5 sets of a superset. So your first set is going to be kind of a max strength lift. You're lifting for 1 to 5 repetitions, but you're going to superset that with a power movement. How explosive, how fast can you move? So 1 to 5 reps of strength, followed by supersetted with 8 to 10 repetitions of a much lighter weight performed explosively. So it could be something like a 1 to 5 reps of a barbell back squat, and then you can superset that by putting that barbell down and maybe going over and doing plyometric box jumps. That's a good example of what that might look like. The tempo, all of them, explosive, as fast as you can lift the heavy stuff and as fast as you can throw the light stuff. So all your tempos on this are going to be explosive. And then you're going to do a 1 to 2 minute rest between pairs, or a 3 to 5 minute rest at the end of a circuit if you decide to put together a circuit for this. All right. Here's where I think we are gonna look at something just as a fitness professional we need to pay attention to, which is called risk versus reward. And that our stance is that you should never really compromise form over function. So yeah, but I can do more, or I can do it faster this way, or I can lift more this way. Well, that may be true, but we don't want to compromise form and technique over function so that you can say, oh, I've got more, I can do this faster, I can do this a certain way. Form and technique are to be prioritized. Always use caution when training on unstable surfaces. So be aware of unstable surfaces and be particularly cautious if you have your clients on unstable surfaces, and recognize the limitation of fitness apps. So there are limitations, and being able to develop programs as you write them and put them out, and then you're there with them, putting them together and enacting them, are highly valuable. All right, never compromise form over function. Careful on unstable surfaces and fitness apps. Fitness apps, not always 100% accurate, could lead to miscalculations of actual exercise and effort and output, potentially leading to overexertion. All right. Here's our last little bit of our conversation today. And I know that it was really heady, could be pretty tedious going through this content. And if you've studied this information before, then just hearing the acute variables, what is the set, what is the rep, what is the tempo, all that stuff. I know, you've suffered enough. So let's wrap it up. Training modalities. Well, there are different ways that we can train. We've got strength training machines. There are free weights, barbells and dumbbells and kettlebells and cable machines, elastic resistance bands, medicine balls, body weight, suspended body weight training, suspension trainers, sandbags, vipers, battling ropes, proprioceptive tools like stability balls and cushioned pads, fitness trackers. These are all modalities, and these modalities are tools for the toolbox. So there's Not a right one necessarily, and not necessarily wrong ones. There might be right or wronger ones for your particular client. Some things don't work for them. But with that said, the training modalities, having a deep uh, trunk of or deep toolbox where you can go through different types of training modalities and find out what works for your clients. What do your clients enjoy doing? Which modalities will support them in best reaching their goals? And realizing that none of them are particularly wrong. It's just that some of them might be more right for your client, depending on what their goals are and what they actually enjoy doing. And never discount the importance of getting somebody to enjoy physical activity. So if you have to limit how fast somebody gets to their end result because you did a modality that they enjoyed more, then that could be more valuable. Because honestly, if they're not enjoying exercise, then this isn't going to last long. But if you can get people to enjoy exercise and to engage with physical activity on a regular basis, then you're going to support them in their process. And that's what's most important. And that maybe they get to a point where they don't have to pay you. You're like, hey, wait a minute, Rick, I don't like where this is going. But what I'm saying is that we can provide self-efficacy. They're doing it on their own, and they're doing it because they love it. That's what our goals should be for our clients. All right. With that being said, thank you so much for taking time to listen to this particular podcast and reviewing the NASM OPT model. Every little nugget and variable bit by bit, each level, each phase of the model. So thank you so much for being a part of it. If you have questions for me, feel free to reach out. You can reach me primarily on Instagram. DM me, message me at dr.rickrichy, R-I-C-H-E-Y, or you can email me, rick.richey@nasm.org. Thank you so much for your time. You've listened to the NASM CPT podcast.